From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is the original and weekly podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all of our old episodes as well as all our fellow network members at yourunpodcast.com. And, of course, most importantly, with me this week is Sean, who is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. Sean, it feels like it's been a minute. How are you doing today?
It's March. It's Crummy Marchathon, right in the center of it. And I'm going nutzoid. How about you?
I'm also going nutzoid. I had to, well, we'll get into it, but I had to correct myself after this week. So, but I digress. We'll come back around to that. What have you been watching?
I'm going to do a little game with you, John. Okay? I've done a little impromptu game. I was on vacation last week. I watched a lot of shit. So I'm going to read things and you tell me if you want me to talk about them, but I will just mention them otherwise. Okay? I'll run through them. You say, sounds good. Tell me about it. And I'll tell you about it. So this is just a sample. I got back a few days ago. I haven't really watched anything to talk about because I've watched so much stuff. So I watched Surviving the Game.
Sorry, go for it.
You want me to talk about that?
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with it, but it's come up so many times on this show that, you know what? Don't talk about that because that's going to get talked about at length at some point.
Okay. All right. So we got Surviving the Game. I got Champagne and Bullets. I got Hype with exclamation point. I've got Return of Bruno. I've got Dream Scenario. I've got Freedom Downtime. I have got, that's really it. And I've got a found footage festival stuff on YouTube. And I watched the newest, I'm very excited, the newest Dark Side of the Ring season just started, kicking it off with the story of Earthquake, John Tenta. And I can talk about any of those. Any of them, man.
Let's start with Dream Scenario because I have seen that. And I don't know that that's one that we'll talk about at length, but I'd be interested to hear if you're on a similar wavelength that I am to it.
I liked it quite a bit. We kind of talked about it last week, so if you want to hear what John had to say about it last week, well, before, I guess, you can listen to last week's episode. It was fine. I didn't really quite think it was as dark as you had. Actually, was it last week? Was it Phantom of the Mall that you talked about it?
I don't think so. I think it was Uninvited. Yeah.
I didn't think it was quite as dark as I remembered you mentioning, but it was kind of, I liked it was kind of that snake eating itself kind of feel where it starts to really interfere with not knowing quite what was real and what was the dream and how everything started. I thought was kind of weird, you know, a little kinky for a little bit of the time when.
Yeah, for about 20 minutes in the middle of the movie.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I did really actually quite enjoy it.
I don't think it was dark so much like horror movie dark. I think it was more dark like this might be a bad example because he does a lot of somewhat horror stuff, but like David Fincher type dark, that type of movie.
Oh, like dark underbelly kind of stuff.
Yeah, like kind of weird fucked up thought process type of dark. It's not like Art the Clown dissecting a person on their bed in front of their mom dark. Like that's a whole different shade of dark. But it is, like I said, it definitely unravels from start. Snake eating itself is a good way to describe it, but what you get at the beginning of that movie to the end of it, you see quite the progression for sure.
It goes places for sure.
You mentioned Dark Side of the Ring, so I will just kind of hit back and forth, I guess. I did watch the new biography on Sergeant Slaughter. So
I watched that too.
A little bit of Wrestler's Corner. So
a little bit.
How did you feel about the Sergeant?
I felt that was so.
I felt like he was jerking himself off through most of the episode.
Yes, it felt very self-serving. The music that they played made it feel like there was going to be some big revelation. I mean, the guy was honestly, for all intents and purposes, his actual life seems like it was quite boring. He was very cut and dry, very straight and narrow, and that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you think of wrestling and you want that juicy stuff, you know, all these other biographies that came out that they've done have had some element of somebody really fucking themselves over. I think actually this season, the previous one, the Randy Orton episode, that had a little bit of darkness to it because he became such a narcissist at some point. You got to think he still holds on to some of that, but Sergeant Slaughter was just they played this swelling music to kind of pull at your heartstrings, but it's just like, okay, yeah, he's fine. Like I remember him just bouncing back and forth. He was never necessarily a WWE or WWF staple. I mean, I think most people remember him from is G.I. Joe, you know, because he did all those intros.
That was kind of the main reason I went into it, because I mean, obviously I remember Sergeant Slaughter because he was everywhere for most of my childhood. But I couldn't remember if Sergeant Slaughter, the wrestling character, came before the G.I. Joe character or the other way around. Because I wouldn't put it past WWE to adopt a character from a cartoon just to, make it for their own shilling or whatever. So that was kind of the biggest thing I was interested to see is like which one came first, the chicken or the egg in that. And his character arc, and yeah, it's wrestling. We all know that these are character arcs, are not, factful. Usually it's like he went from being like the biggest piece of shit to like the biggest hero to a complete piece of shit to like a sort of hero again. It's weird, the roller coaster and the ups and downs they took his career on. And it really feels like, looking at it in this condensed hour and a half format, it really feels like you could have just left him.
There didn't need to be a whole episode.
Well, not an hour and a half one, maybe an hour one or 45 minutes would have been fine. But watching him, like, I don't know what the fuck he was thinking with this whole Saddam Hussein sympathizer shtick that he did for a few years. That part, I was like, we've used the term edgelord in regards to clowns before, and that just felt like the most edgelord like wrestler move that I can think of in a industry that's built on being an edgelord. Maybe I'm wrong. So
no, I mean, I'd agree with you on that.
How was Dark Side of the Ring?
I didn't know much about what happened to Earthquake. I didn't know his background, John Tenta. I didn't know much about where he came from. I remember seeing some of the things they mentioned in this. They talk about how he kind of came into the WWE, and he was just one of those. He was an audience plant, and it was Dino Bravo and Ultimate Warrior, and they're doing push-ups, and they wanted the biggest guy in the stadium to sit on their backs. Right. And have him do push-ups while he's on their back, and he sabotages it, and he like does a splash to Ultimate Warrior or whatever, and that's how he got his thing. But it was actually really interesting. He was a collegiate wrestler. He went to Japan. He became a sumo wrestler for a year. He won 3 tournaments. He was in 3 tournaments. He won them as a first year kind of sumo dude. But when you're in sumo, you have to do what the elder sumo person, whatever they're called.
Yeah, it's like a rank thing.
Yeah, and you have to do what they tell you to do. And he just didn't want to do that. So he started pro wrestling in Japan, and he got the call from WWE that they wanted him to come over. And I just didn't realize that he had so much time, because he just came out of nowhere when he was in WWE. So it was a real interesting progression to see where he had come from, how he had, his career had went, and then like, I didn't realize, I figured he had passed away, but I didn't realize that he actually did. And they kind of go into that too. So it's, it was a good story. It was, it's a good kickoff. I've been waiting for, I don't look at what the new episodes coming up are. So I just was interested to see what they were going to do with it this season.
Yeah. You tend to be the king of Wrestler Corner. I just kind of cherry pick based off like, oh, I know that guy. I'll watch this.
You're in the crowd cheering me on.
Yeah, something like that.
Watch those documentaries.
I'm 100% the pallbearer to your Undertaker. So, all right, goofy face and all. I don't remember the other title, so pick the short one with the exclamation point. Let's go for that.
Hype.
I've
seen this before. Hype is a Doug Prey, I think that's his name, documentary. He did Scratch. I talked about Scratch, I think, at some point last year, but that's like a hip-hop kind of turntable documentary. And this one, Hype, is basically about the Seattle music scene before, during, and immediately after the grunge era. And it's all filmed, I think it came out in the late 90s. So it's all people that were from the time. They actually talked to Eddie Vedder's on talking about it. They didn't have Kurt Cobain. It was
King
after
Buzzo
him.
On there?
Yeah. Yep. They interview him for a little bit.
Is he a douchebag on it?
No, he didn't come across too poorly.
Okay, well, that's good.
A lot of different bands, a lot of bands that you've heard of, a lot that that never really went. But, it kind of covers when grunge got popular, everything, like record labels were coming out to see bands in Seattle just to sign them because they were from Seattle, and they figured that they could just all market them the same way. So it was just a really interesting surrounding kind of feel.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the punk scene when Nirvana broke. Like Nirvana, if you listen to bands from that era that had their heyday, whether they got big or not, in the mid 90s, they all will tell you that like Nirvana changed the entire landscape of music and what was possible. If you want to bet, that's probably an interesting enough documentary to watch.
Yeah, it was really good. I've seen it recently too. I think I just revisited it last year. It's a good documentary. I really enjoy his stuff because it's music. these couple movies are music based and they get pretty in depth. So you don't just get the real tertiary, like 1,000-foot view of everything. You're getting they're talking to people that were there or that are there because it's current when these movies are filmed.
Do you want to cover or hit on any of the other ones that you mentioned other than Surviving the Game?
Just real quick, I want to talk about the return of Bruno.
Yeah, Bruno.
Yeah, so
Borat Jr.
No, it's not that Bruno. So this Bruno is the blues Bruno.
The Bruce Willis Bruno?
I wasn't gonna give it away this soon, but yeah. So in the mid to late 80s, Bruce Willis got really popular. He was releasing an album of blues music. He plays the harmonica, and this mockumentary came out on, I believe it was HBO, and it's called The Return of Bruno. And the thing that they do is they put him, kind of superimpose him Forrest Gump style. This is pre-Forrest Gump, but they superimpose him, or they film stuff where it'll look like era appropriate, where he's making songs like the Beatles or whatever, but the music sounds like it was recorded now, so it doesn't sound authentic, or at the time, late 80s or whatever. This thing is so blowing Bruce Willis. Like, he must have had pictures of somebody sucking somebody off that he wasn't supposed to have, because he's not a bad singer at the time, but the thing with it is that all these famous people, like real musicians, like Grace Slick, and I can't even think of all the people because it's like 40 minutes or whatever. I only got 20 some into it, and I'm just like, this is so like blowing itself so hard. I can't stand it. Let's just watch something else that's fun. So then I think I turned that off, and we turned on Freedom Downtime. I talked about Takedown a few weeks ago. This is the documentary from 2600 magazine that basically debunks all this Kevin Mitnick, Satomu Shimomura shit that Takedown the movie did, and it kind of dunks on it. It's on YouTube if you're interested in all that stupid early 2000s hacker shit. Check it out, Freedom Downtime. I'll leave links to this, all the stuff I talk about, all the stuff that John talks about, this movie, Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, all that stuff. They'll be in the show notes. So if you're interested in watching any of it, we'll have links to show you how you can watch it.
Yeah, proceed with caution on some of them.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, anything else you want to talk about before I ramble?
No, ramble, please.
Adding to the garbage pile, after something else that I watched, I gave the movie Night Swim a try, which I remember really liking the trailer for Night Swim. I was like, oh, that looks kind of weird and creepy and fucked up. Yeah, no, it's not great. It is I want to say it's like an hour and 40-minute long movie about a fucking haunted pool. That's literally what this is about, is a haunted swimming pool.
Close the door. And walk away. It's
one of those movies that it's a pretty thin premise to begin with, like what's happening and why it's happening. And once they kind of put all the cards on the table, you're like, well, of course that's what fucking happened. Like I'm trying to beat around the bush so I don't ruin it, because it is a pretty new movie. And even though I kind of strongly dislike this movie, I still would say you should go watch it. And not you necessarily, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but listeners, if you are interested in it, go watch it and form your own opinion. Don't take my word as gospel. But it's just one of those very 2020s movies that feels very phoned in on the effects side, and they'd never really push that much to do anything gnarly or creepy or make you say, oh, that was a cool effect. There's only so many times you could see pool water go from that really chlorine blue color to like black before you're like, it's not really creepy anymore. It looks like you just got a filtration problem now. The characters in it are bland at best, and you're kind of, spoiler alert, you're kind of waiting for someone to get dead at some point, and when that never really fully comes through, you're kind of like, ah, fuck you, pool, and it doesn't save itself in any way. So for me, it's a steaming turd to start 2023. But like I said, 2023, if you like Blumhouse, or 2024, whatever fucking year this is, so it was probably shot in 2023. There's maybe a story in there that you could have pared down to 30 to 45 minutes and had an interesting Tales from the Crypt or something like that episode. But as a full length movie, it's just not there. So unless you want to tear it down on like a full, episode, I don't really have any big ambition to go back to that again. My palate cleanser between things, I had a couple. I watched The Lost Empire, which you're probably familiar with that. It's your buddy Jim Wynorski, so usually a good place to start.
Pre-chopping mall.
But it's basically just a bunch of half-naked women in a tunnel or sewer system or something fighting with swords, and then they eventually have a big penis gun that is wearing a limp condom, which is kind of funny. That movie is not necessarily where I would categorize as good, per se, but it's definitely good in the vein of the type of crap that you or I find amusing. Lots of boobs, lots of dead things, lots of weird shit happening. It's really not all I got to say about that. My real palate cleanser came yesterday because throughout the week, I've been kind of dreading this episode, to be perfectly honest, because this movie that we're going to talk about, it just goes so nutzoid. So last night I just kind of fell into a Friday the 13th sinkhole and was totally happy with that. So I rewatched part 4 and part 6, which are two of the better movies in the franchise. And it's really kind of fun seeing the difference between the apex of they're all the original run. The first 8 movies are all the Paramount ones before they got bought out by New Line. But there's a definite break in the films where the first 4 feel like early 80s slashers. Like they're borderline grindhouse movies with all the shit that you want in that kind of movie. And then after part 4, when they rebirthed the series like a year later, it just flips the switch into like total 80s neon, over the top, borderline cartoony type horror movies. You know the difference, right? Not to say that one's necessarily better. I mean, I have a preference, but the difference between the two, especially if you watch them back to back like that, it's kind of noticeable, to say the least. But yeah, no shock. Like, I use Jason Voorhees as a palate cleanser, which he doesn't look very clean, so maybe I should have gone for something that's a little more showered to put on the palate. But I didn't.
Like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, he looks well done, at least.
Always looks kind of wet.
Very mesquite finish on that guy. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got as far as bullshit that I watch. Other than that, I'm still just rewatching Bob's Burgers and stuff like that, just passing time.
The usual.
Yeah, usual crap. Waiting for wrestling documentaries or episodes to come out, Curb, those things. I still am finding it funny that people are very convinced that they're going to try to finish Curb the same way they finished Seinfeld, and I almost hope they do now just to piss people off. But that's pretty much all I got. You want to take a break and come back and talk about a fat guy going nutzoid?
Let's take a break and come back and talk about a fat guy going nutzoid.
All right, we'll be back momentarily, and yeah, listen to this stuff. Hey, Sean, how are you today?
Horrible. I've got the mumps.
You've got the mumps. What would cheer you up when you have the mumps?
Liquor.
Liquor also works, but I was thinking you could listen to a great comedy podcast like You Gonna Eat That Crust. It's available on the Yorin Podcast Network, and it's a podcast that features all sorts of great topics like movies, animal attacks, video games, some new, some old, and all types of other stuff. They kind of go all over the map. Have you heard about this podcast?
I think I'm too sick for that.
Well, I disagree with you, but you should check them out anyway because they're on the Yorin Podcast Network and available for you to listen to right now. All right, so we're back, and we're, as Sean mentioned, or maybe he didn't mention, I don't know, we're going to try something a little different. This is one of the lesser known movies that we've talked about on this show. This is probably what, as far as movies that people have actually heard of, probably in the bottom like 3, I would say. So before we get into this, we're going to play the trailer for you. We might or might not react to it. We'll see how that goes. And you can always watch us react to it or not react to it on our YouTube channel. Sean, fire it up. Let's get this shit show rolling.
What's the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel is at Dewey Podmonster. Shocker. There'll be a link probably.
There, up in the sky. The bird. It's a plane. The bird.
No.
It's the Mooka! Yes, it's the Mooka.
It's the Mooka.
Most unusual movie hero
I still can't tell if that name is offensive or
all
not.
muscle. He's all man. He's all over the place in
I do like his dancing skills. That's a good touch.
The one-of-a-kind comedy of chaos, where the belly laughs come from deep inside.
I forgot that they put the vomit gag in the trailer.
Some say he's a psycho who escaped from a loony bin. Others say he's a genius who really knows how to use his head.
I feel like they're really overselling this helicopter bit.
Some say
I feel like
he
they're
has
really
an
overselling the
unbelievable
comedy.
effect on women.
Why, you lousy shit!
Others say he has the
That's how I met
strength
my
of a
wife.
superhero.
You too?
Mm-hmm.
But they all agree on
Good slap
one
across the
thing.
face. It's a good way
You
to get,
lousy shit.
Huh?
He is. That guy goes nutzoid. The trend-setting, action-packed comedy that's a real gas. Finally, there's a comedy you can really sink your teeth into.
And they really put all the
He's
highlights
got
in this trailer, didn't
everyone
they?
spinning in circles.
I mean, I gotta say, for being a comedy, I don't think any of the things that they've shown yet have been funny.
That was kind of funny. It's got a real, like, Curly and the Three Stooges vibe going on some of these, but
That Guy Goes Nutzoid is about friendship.
is it?
It's about love.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's an awesome adventure. That Guy Goes Nutzoid, the new wave comedy that's sweeping the nation.
You are a fucking mocha!
Rated PG-13. Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13.
It's amazing that this is rated at all, let alone rated PG-13.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where you're kind of surprised that they ever even put it up in front of anybody to be rated.
Yeah, well, especially, and we'll get into it, but if you know kind of where this movie resides and who picked it up and all that, like, why even bother rating this movie? Again, it's called That Guy Goes Nutzoid or Ziesters, but either way, this doesn't seem like a movie that really needs a rating or anything like that, but we'll get into it. So we're going to kind of roll into where we usually start our episode or our chats about movies like this. And we do a third party review. And this week, our third party review is from Knaw on IMDb because there's only one review available on other spots.
I thought you were going to say there is only one Knaw.
Well, there is only one Knaw that I know of. And Knaw in July of 2000, just 2000, said, "This is by far the worst movie ever made. Many years ago, we used it as a torture contest. The person able to sit through the longest won, or lost, depending on your idea of winning. I attempted 3 times. The longest I lasted was 45 minutes. Oh, 1 star out of 10. Sean, tell us what the fuck Ziesters Going Nutzoid is about."
Do you have a dog whining over there?
Yeah, he's not sure if he wants to go upstairs or stay downstairs.
All right, so we go over to IMDb, we go to the storyline and the plot. If we look at it, I want to point out, I'm sure we'll get to this, but this rating on IMDb is 2.3 out of 10. I believe you said when we talked about this off mic, this is the lowest rated movie of anything that we've watched. Second lowest. Paranormal
Yeah.
Highway?
Bukkake Bus. Yeah, Paranormal Highway and was the lowest. I believe.
At 2.1. Anyways,
right.
Storyline and the plot, these are exactly the same. No one could even be bothered to write a summary for this. So it says, 2 brothers befriend an escaped mental patient, quote, the fat guy, and accompany him on his misadventures in the big city.
I guess. I'm not even sure that's accurate. We'll go ahead and start with, this is a trauma movie, and I'm going to go as far to say this might be the least trauma thing that I've ever seen. And I went through a trauma phase in high school where I wanted to see everything I could that was trauma because it's very ridiculous.
Eclectic.
Yeah, this movie is ridiculous, but not in what you would think of when you think of trauma. I don't there's nothing about this that feels like a trauma movie to me other than it being bad. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it was in the phase where trauma was like, we're going to buy the rights to everything we can buy the rights to, and we're going to release it because nobody else is buying the rights to these. So we want to be known as the shithouse label or whatever.
I mean, I can't imagine they paid more than like $15 for the rights to this. And we kind of touched on this movie it looks like it's available on YouTube. Like I saw a handful of videos that say they're this that are about the runtime of this movie. So that's probably what they are. But this movie was released on VHS. This says so much. Troma never paid to continue the rights or renew the rights or whatever phrasing is. They never paid to keep the rights to put it out again on DVD, which says quite a bit because I don't know what the rights to this movie would cost, but I bet if Sean and I pulled our money together, we could probably buy the rights to That Guy Goes Nutzoid and do whatever the fuck we wanted with it, because I can't imagine they're more than like $50.
I don't know if you read the same interview that I did with the writer-director.
I did not.
Okay, I will link it in the show notes. John Golden is the writer-director. He appears, if you get the director's cut of the VHS tape, because like John said, it's not on DVD. The only thing that's added is there's about, 5 minutes of an interview between Lloyd Kaufman and the director, John Golden. And I read an interview, a side kind of thing that was done just a few years ago. And he said basically what had happened was when the DVD rights came up or whatever, Troma wanted to release it on DVD, but he would not take the money. He didn't want to put it on DVD, basically. Like, I think it's not necessarily that he's ashamed of it because it's not on his resume anywhere else. I guess he's like a big producer he went on to be a big producer of CBS News, and he's done a bunch of other films. The interview goes all over the place, so it's really interesting to read, but he didn't want to sell the rights because he thought he could get a better deal, basically, is what it sounded like to me for the DVD. The other thing, this movie is called Ziesters, aka Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, and you might be saying, like we did, why the fuck is this movie called Ziesters? In the interview, again, linked in the show notes, he says that Ziesters, this movie was actually supposed to be, so the runtime of this is about 118, like you said. The runtime of this movie was supposed to be, I think he said half an hour to 45 minutes longer. The movie was called Ziesters because the two brothers in the movie, they used a made up, like a homemade swear word, Ziesters. They say it one time in the movie.
I thought I heard it a couple times, but okay.
And when Troma bought the rights to the movie and they said, we're going to re-release this under the name Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, they recut the movie to cut a bunch of stuff out. So there's a bunch of scenes that are cut. The movie doesn't seem like it really lost anything because they made all these cuts, but it definitely changed the name. And then they went with the Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid theme overall. And we're going to also link the poster of this movie in the show notes.
I got a feeling there's going to be, the majority of it's going to be the panel for this episode or whatever.
Yeah, true. It's like they really embellished a few scenes that you think they're in the movie. I mean, there's a woman in a bikini with a mohawk. She's not in a bikini in the movie. She has a mohawk and it's just like a 3-second encounter, which we saw in the trailer. There's them driving in a car and it's fun. I think there's a helicopter on the cover. It's just like...
Yep, there's him with a saxophone. There's a vehicle that is...
A cop car.
Appears to be airborne.
Yeah. The truck, like the, whatever that kind of Ford Bronco looking thing.
Right.
The marketing department from Troma really earned their money because they took this movie, this really disparate kind of thing, and they put it on a poster or a box or whatever, and they really tried to sell it hardcore about this Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid.
Kinda. To their credit or discredit, depending on how you want to look at it. If I came across this VHS, maybe not now that I've seen it, but if I was at the flea market or whatever and I saw a video that was packaged like this that said Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid on it, I'm buying it. Like, sight and scene.
Absolutely.
Like, this is the kind of movie that you're like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but this is something that I need to watch. Now, having watched it, again, we're going to have a conversation about that. But to your point, the marketing people behind that decision to keep the title as Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, what they put on this cover, this looks like, if I didn't know better, like now, I would think Miami Connection, but with a fat guy, like, just tearing shit up, would be what I would assume out of this. I would expect tons of nudity, probably a lot of ridiculous over-the-top violence and explosions, and an hour and a half of just
madcap,
idiotic fun.
Yeah. Comedy.
Right.
This is not my first time watching the movie. I suggested this for Crummy Movie March because it is a title that you see and you're like, that has to be a great movie. I will talk about this more in depth as I go, especially when we get to hot dogs. I will definitely kind of give a little bit of my information about seeing it and my feelings on the movie. But can you mind if I just kind of go into the story a little bit to tell what the story is? So the story is really very loosely held together. At the beginning of the movie, we're following Roger and his brother Dougal and their friend, and they're just kind of losers, basically. Like, he's kind of a drug dealer. It's kind of just hinted at a little bit. His aunt Helen dies. The brothers and the friend go to the funeral, and the whole thing's pretty impenetrable. Like, they end up like breaking the person's finger in the casket. They like bend them backwards or something somehow. That's a big stink. Roger needs to get a job. Long story short, Roger needs to get a job to basically stay out of jail. And he's also it's very hard to tell what's going on. I think he's trying to inherit money from a will or something. So he needs to get a job. He needs to do all this stuff. He sucks at the job and he ducks it because
I got the impression he was on probation or something, and that's why he kept saying that he had to get a job.
Okay.
Not that he couldn't just be unemployed. But they never say that. That's just kind of the implication I took from it. Yeah.
Anyways, he gets a job. He sucks. He's like, I just got to punch in and punch out. This sucks. I'm leaving. He goes to visit his brother Dougal, who works at a camp for mentally handicapped people. This movie, I mean, it's basically the retarded flies around this movie. Like, this is the 80s, or this is filmed in early 1983. It didn't come out till 86. He works at this mentally handicapped camp, basically. They meet the character, fat guy, the Muka, which I'm still not sure, like you said during the trailer, if that's an offensive term or not. I couldn't find that was, but the way that they use it makes it feel...
Sounds it.
Yeah, it feels like it's some kind of Yiddish word for, retard
it makes it sound
or
like
idiot
it's
or
a
something.
slang for
Yeah.
fat, stupid guy.
Right. So they go to the camp. The Muka gets into Roger's briefcase. He finds hair clippers, quaaludes, stuff like that. That's when stuff really goes off the rails. Dougal and Roger...
Lots of quaaludes.
Dougal and Roger realize that they need to get the hell out of there. They're just going to run away. And the Muka cuts his hair in this like reverse monk haircut pattern. Like basically everything but the middle and the back of his hair is shaved off. And they leave. The fat guy stows away in their car, and hilarity ensues. Basically, they're like too afraid to take him back to the camp for some reason. So their plan is that they're just going to tie him up on the side of the road, but he breaks out, he gets in their car, and he goes with them to the big city. And that's when supposed hilarity is supposed to ensue.
So maybe I'm reading between the lines too much on this, and I kind of mentioned this in the trailer part. I feel like a lot of this movie is the fat guy. I'm going to call him the fat guy because I feel like that's less offensive than calling him the Muka.
You feel like you're doing something bad when you call him his actual character name.
Which I'm not even sure that's his character name or just what they call him. But anyway, I feel like once they get out of this mental hospital or whatever, this is like a very loosely sewn together attempt at recreating a bunch of Three Stooges sketches in random areas. Clearly, fat guy is playing Curly. He even looks like him occasionally with the suit and like was that a pork pie hat or whatever? And anything that happens in this movie that even has a moderate amount of entertainment value, it happens in 2 to 4 minute bursts, and then it's back to a lot of like time padding is what it feels like, because it's a lot of like them moving around or driving around or walking around, or we got to get jobs or all this bullshit. They're not really doing fucking much of anything. I hesitate to say that there's even really a strong story in this, because the story that's in like somewhere around what apparently is near the end of the movie, I'm like, how the fuck did these guys get here and why are they going wherever they're going? It's kind of like a almost like you could try to pass it off as like a buddy road trip movie, except I don't really get the impression that they're buddies, and I'm not really sure that they're intentionally on a road trip. They just happen to be traveling somewhere,
like escaping, and they're trying to stay with a friend. Like they go visit the other guy. But I'm not even
sure it feels like they're escaping. It just feels like they're kind of feeling they're escaping, but they also kind of feel like they don't know what the fuck they're doing at the same time. It's very, I mean, even by like bad movie standards or crummy movie standards, the premise of why these three guys are going to wherever the fuck they're going
is very thin.
It's held together with like dental floss and like used chewing gum.
You know what this movie really feels like to me? It feels like one of those movies like Encino Man, except Encino Man learns shit, right? He like learns how to speak, and he kind of learns how society works. Stuff like he becomes a cool guy. This feels like Encino Man, but a road trip. Like they're trying to mix it with a road trip, because the Muka, his character name is the Muka. That's what it is on IMDb. Side note about IMDb, the credits on this movie is like nobody was top billed. It's just somebody like threw darts, and that's the order that they picked, like who the names are. The top people in the cast are not in the top cast. They're in the regular stuff. I digress. It feels like...
sign of a good movie.
Yeah,
usually.
That sounds like, just a vote of confidence right there in a movie. The other vote of confidence is when the first 15 minutes of your VHS tape are all previews for other movies that they generally put at the end. No, these are all at the beginning, because that's probably all you're going to want to watch. But he just never learns anything. So it's like they do like the Encino Man formula, but they don't ever, it's never fun. There's not really much that happens that's fun. They pitch the movie as being very funny, or they try to pitch it as being funny, but nothing funny ever happens.
Well, and I almost wonder if they took because they flat out tell you this guy is a ward of the state and that he's mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
So you almost have to, and part of this is looking at this through 2024 glasses, not 1986 glasses. Like that might have had a little bit, because again, not that it's right, but you were allowed to make fun of things in 1986 that you're not allowed to in 2024. But watching it in 2024, you almost wonder if they took that whole, this guy has serious mental issues, shouldn't be laughing at him, you should be seeking help. You almost wonder if they took that.
What?
Yeah, I know. If they took that chunk of the story out, and I know there's no way we're getting a reboot of Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid where they can
I'm
fix
sure they
that.
burned all the footage, all the masters, all the stuff that they cut out. They just threw in the garbage.
Absolutely. But him going to this nightclub and dancing like an idiot could be entertaining, except you kind of, when you watch this now, you're like, I'm not supposed to be laughing at this person. Like it's not like, there's a lot of movies.
I don't know a time that you would ever watch that and think it was funny, because it's not funny. Like he just doesn't do anything that's funny. A good human being wouldn't.
No,
I'm saying even like base level, lowest form of humanity would watch that, because it's just not, everything is so forced. It's just not, there's no joke. There's no, the biggest jokes, the biggest things that are funny in this movie are people farting, people burping, and when he throws up in the restaurant. And even in the trailer, they show him when he's got the saxophone, they just put the fart in there. He never actually farts in that part of the movie. So they're just trying to sell this, but there's no jokes. It's just not, I don't know.
I think they actually overkill the throw up scene. It would be funny, but they don't cut away from it. You're watching it the whole time, and it's obviously fake. Like it's not real puke. At least I don't think it is. But it goes on for a long time. Like he's power vomiting in the middle of this bar or this restaurant or whatever.
It's like a diner
Ponderosa
or whatever.
Steakhouse. Yeah.
Ponderosa.
He's like power vomiting for a solid like minute and a half of screen time. And he's making all the like over embellished like noises and all that. And if they had, let's just say for the sake of argument, if you'd done a barf joke where you hear the barf but you don't actually see the barf, and you cut away and you get more of a reaction to the barf, as opposed to just watching this guy that we know at this point has got some serious problems just power vomit in the middle of a restaurant, and don't they just make him wear it after that? Like they don't do anything other than just kind of let him finish barfing, and then from that point on until he takes his shirt off for the remainder of the movie, he's basically wearing like a barf covered shirt.
No, they do switch his clothes.
And they say he smells or something?
I don't think he's wearing, he starts wearing that pink shirt. There's a pink shirt that he wears, and then he goes to that place with the, I don't know, it's another diner the next morning. So there's all these scenes, an extended scene. Basically, there's all these funny little gags that are supposed to happen that, again, aren't funny. They go to bed. The Mooka escapes with, I can't ever remember, it doesn't even matter what the characters' names are. The guy that's his friend, I guess, well, I think his name's Peter.
Isn't it Roger and something?
Roger, there we go. Roger has a briefcase with all this money because he's trying to make
different Dawn of the Dead guy.
He's trying to make a drug deal or whatnot. All gets out, takes the briefcase, goes to a restaurant, just gives the lady like hundreds of dollars for a sundae, and he's spraying like chocolate sauce all over his face and his shirt. Then he takes the shirt off, and that's how they find him. They're like looking for him because they're actually, for some reason, like they have had no conscience through the rest of the movie, and now they suddenly have a conscience and they feel like, oh, well, I gotta find this guy because for whatever reason, like they don't really have a responsibility for him, but they don't want to take him back to the camp because they think they're going to get in trouble. It's weird.
Yeah, so basically the movie crescendos into this, like, eventually there's this big like foot chase scene with the cops. He somehow pulls a gun on the cops, which I don't even know where the fuck he got the gun that he points at the cop.
He takes it from a cop.
Did he? Okay. Mm-hmm. So he points a gun at a cop and doesn't get gunned down in the streets, which is
immediately
shocking. Yeah, shocking to me. He does get popped in the shoulder or something, like doesn't kill him. But again, I'm amazed that they didn't just turn this guy into the like, you know, the RoboCop example. Scene.
Right. Yeah, all the squibs and shit.
Right. So basically, in my head when I'm watching this, I'm like, all right, well, he just got shot. That's got to be the end of this shit show, right? No, we got like another 20 minutes of them trying to break him out of this new mental institution or whatever it is, and
yeah, it's like a hospital for the criminally insane.
Yeah, something like that. And this is in the trailer, so I'd say spoiler, but I don't really care for this movie. I'd rather you watch Night Swim than watch this, to be perfectly honest. But, you know, they break him out and they pick him up in a helicopter, and the whole way they pick him up is very implausible, to put it politely.
He's just hanging there from a string.
Did you, I know you said you'd seen this before. This was my first watch, and it would probably be my last watch. At least I hope it's my last watch. So Boomer, if you're listening to this, please don't make me watch this movie again.
Make him watch it.
Did you get the impression that the helicopter was going to fall out of the sky when they picked him up? That would be the joke. Is like, he's so fat, he pulled the helicopter down, and I'm guessing they didn't have the budget to blow up a helicopter, even on RC budget or something. But
No,
I had a real
didn't.
feeling like it's okay. That's where I thought it was going to go.
The way, and to mention the budget in that interview that I'll link that I've referred to ad nauseum, the movie original budget was like $250,000.
Oh, I thought they were going to say $2.50.
They made $1 million, so the budget climbed to $1 million. They raised $1 million to make the movie. The way that the movie goes, the first half of the movie is all this slapsticky madcap, whatever. The second part is like, well, we're gonna call it third. Second third is kind of more of the same, and then that last third is very much this. Roger gets his conscience. He decides, hey, I actually like this guy. He's kind of becoming a friend, and now I need to break him out. I feel for whatever reason I've had this change of conscience, where I need to make sure this guy's taken care of and I don't just leave him to rot. But the way that they handle it is almost like if you were to start feeding a stray cat and the stray cat comes to your house and it eats and you're like, oh, now I kind of feel responsible for it. And if you saw that cat like dead in the street, got hit by a car or something, you'd feel kind of bad about it, but you'd kind of go about your day. That's how Roger kind of treats this guy, but he kind of realizes that this is going to be my project that makes me a nice person because I'm not going to sell drugs and blah, 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 whatever, and he breaks him out of the mental hospital. So I didn't really think that there was going to be anything after that that's like, oh, ho, ho, whackety schmackety do. Like I didn't expect any of that stuff to happen after that now, but I had this realization watching it this time because I had seen it like several years ago. Watching it this time for this specific talk about it, I started to realize watching it as an older person, the first time I watched it, I couldn't even make it through 45 minutes of the movie. Like the guest reviewer said, I thought every person in this movie had the most punchable face of all time. And if I could have just went into the movie and punched them all and left out of the movie, that would have been like the highlight of my life. Watching it this time, it's a little bit more tolerable. I did start to see what they were trying to do. And this was before I read the interview, knowing that they cut so much out of it. I kind of could see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make the fat guy be like a more human character. And they were trying to make it to be more, I don't know, not realistic, but like you kind of feel for him. But the way that they present it is just bad. And they try to redeem themselves at the end, but the end just comes and it's just gone. It's just like instantly over. They hook him up to the helicopter and the movie's done. And you're like, well, I don't know what the fuck happened. That was weird. And I don't know if you noticed this, when the credits roll, they roll through all the credits and it gets to the end and the credits are cut. There's like, they don't even get to go through all the credits.
I didn't go that far. As soon as the credits came up, I'm like, I'm fucking done.
Yeah. I feel like they just really butchered this movie, and not that it was going to be a masterpiece by any means. It might not even be tolerable, but I feel like putting a flashy name, Trauma putting a flashy name like Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid on this box, it definitely made it memorable. Shit, I remembered it from being a preteen to being out of college and thinking, oh, I still want to see this movie. I've seen it on tape in this one store one time and I've never seen it again. And I want to see what this movie is. So it definitely got its hooks in, but man, I just, how bad was the original movie for it just to turn into this?
Well, and could you imagine if we had to watch another 30 minutes of this for one film? I don't know what you could cut out of this and make it better, but
you could just have it start and then you could have it say the end.
Yeah, that might
make it better.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to this. Like, do you want to just go right into hot dogs and kind of wrap?
Because it's hot dog time.
All right. Do you want to kick us off or you want me to go first? I don't remember who did what last.
I'll just go first. This movie at first blush seems to be a bunch of quote unquote funny skits or situations involving a fat guy who is super strong, right? They don't really get into his mental handicap or anything. And then the rest of the movie just tries to make sense of it. It is that, but it's also the story of this lifelong fuck up who fucks up and lets basically probably an autistic guy out of his house, and they go on some assumed madcap adventures. The movie tries to play it up for laughs, but the problem is it just isn't funny. There's gross out gags, like I mentioned before, but it's usually just a cheap sound effect, and usually it's almost always at the fat guy's expense. This isn't a case where this movie aged poorly. It's just a case of it being bad. It's not like if you were to watch this in 86, you would have thought this was hilarious, and you watch it now and it's like, this is a piece of shit. You would have watched it in 86 and thought it was a piece of shit. You watch it now, you think it's a piece of shit. It's just a piece of shit. if the film was marketed as like a redemption story of a fuck up trying to figure out what he's got to do in his life to not be an asshole, maybe it would have turned out a little bit better. The marketing, though, again, we talked about the movie poster. It tries to be this madcap comedy where, you know, it's just supposed to be this fat guy who's a cool dude and he's picking up babes in bikinis. It's nothing like that at all. If it was this redemption story, you know, try to push that, I might have liked it a little bit more. But as it stands, I got to give it 3 reverse monk haircuts out of 11 hot dogs.
I'll be pretty to the point. One, yes, it's bad to begin with. It was never good to start with. And I don't think adding 30 years of age to it or 40 years of age, whatever, has helped it at all. I think it's actually, like, having not watched this 40 years ago, I can say with pretty much 100% certainty that it's still aged poorly. Title's great. If it's one of those things that almost looks like I probably, if I found it for like $10, I'd probably still buy it just to have it on my shelf because it's that kind of weird looking thing. But that's about the most of a compliment I can give it. The movie's bad. The movie's bad and it should feel bad. That's pretty much it. I give it a moldy to uncondimented hot dogs out of 10. And I don't ever want to watch this again. So hopefully no one asks me to. That's it.
I will sum it up this way. I would love to have this poster on my wall. I would never want to watch this again.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a cool poster. It's a great cover, but that's the best part of it.
And I stand by that. The name is fun.
The names that this goes by, Ziesters and Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, are the best 2 SEO terms you could ever use on your... It's like you could not have better search engine optimization names ever, because if you look for Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid and Ziesters, you are probably going to find every website out there that has anything to do with it, and there's like 2.
Yeah, pretty much. And again, the name is still entertaining. Like I find the name to be funny, and you could probably make the argument that just using the term fat guy is not okay at this point, but I'm not that sensitive. But yeah, this is just fucking dumb.
As a fat guy, I'm not that sensitive.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
You make fun of yourself, right?
Absolutely. Who else can you make fun of if you can't make fun of yourself?
As other podcasters, I don't know. So guess that's still making fun of myself, isn't it? Anyway, question of the week. So in honor of Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid, our question of the week is, well, we only got a couple answers on this. So we asked the question to you, the loving audience, what is your favorite movie with an alternate title? The only spot that we got responses on was on X, no longer Twitter. It's only X. And speaking of Boomer, he's the first one who answered this. He mentioned that his favorite alternate title is the movie Cemetery Man, or...
I want to hear you read this.
Oh, you saw this earlier?
I did. I would love to see you or hear you read this.
De la Morte del Amor. Of death and love, roughly. It's crazy, dreamlike, brilliantly acted, and filled with so much Italian horror goodness. So I've been looking forward to watching this movie since they talked about it on Podcast in the Woods sometime last year. Go back and listen to their episode about it and check it out. And if you've seen this movie, let us know what you think about it. Our friends over at Dissect That Film said they're going to go with Child's Play, which was also called Blood Buddy in the early draft, and Batteries Not Included.
Not to be confused with the Jessica Tandy movie, Batteries Not Included, about the little robots that fly around and protect their apartment building.
I think I've seen that.
No, it came out like around the short circuit era of all that robot
okay.
crap.
Back when they were still robots and not droids.
Back when they were robots that didn't steal your medicine.
Sean, do you have an answer to the question of the week?
I mean, I think I have to go with Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid. That's the best alternate title. We've just talked about it. It's the best. You couldn't make a better title to find something online. Well, either that or it's just not very popular. But you can search Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid in Google.
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, probably a little column A, column B. You can still find shit that is just about Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid on Google or Bing or your search engine of choice. And that's saying a lot, because nowadays you put something in the search engine and it's like you find, the first
All
things.
kinds of shit.
Yeah, just like stuff that doesn't even pertain to what you're looking for.
Yeah, I would agree with you that Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid is probably the best alternate title. I do think that Aerobicide, which we talked about a couple months ago, is a much better title than Killer Workout, which is what I see far more often than Aerobicide. So I guess we can give that an honorable mention. But
and I think we got to give honorable mention to Witch Bitch / Death Spa.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Death Spa's a lot better than Witch Bitch.
Well, it's certainly more marketable.
It's very true.
Yeah, frankly, much like the the fat guy and Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid. My mind kind of farted on this question, but because I was blinded by Nutzoid rage.
And fat guys.
So I'm sure there's others out there. And fat guys. They're very obstructing. So anything you want to add on this one before we start rapping?
No.
Well said. As Sean mentioned, if you want to subject yourself to Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid or Ziesters, whichever you prefer to call it, we'll have links to it in our show notes. This one should be on YouTube, or at least it looks like it is, and all the other stuff we talked about. You can also find all of our other shenanigans at yourunpodcast.com, where all of our old episodes are. Crap.town, which is our site, which also has all of our old episodes. We're on all the podcast platforms, and we're on all the social medias all over the place. If you search Dewey Pod Monster, you're going to find us just at Dewey Pod Monster, and that includes YouTube. Sean, what am I forgetting? Please enlighten this fat guy who has gone nutsoid through the last better part of this week.
If you want to be involved in the question of the week readings, you can answer our question of the week on social media. Again, thanks to everybody who's voting on the polls, who are giving us feedback on the episodes. Much appreciated. It's great to put a poll out there and see people actually answer it. That's nice. If you click any of the links in our show notes, that's nice. If you click any of the links in the show notes, some of them are affiliate links. You know, if you don't, you can get us somehow indirectly some dollars from somebody somewhere, and I don't know, in some place. And if you want to find out more about my Michigan craft beer adventures, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com, or you can find me on social media at Draft Therapy.
All right. We got 1 week left in Crummy Movie March, and next week promises to be crusty and crummy all at the same time. So we'll talk to you then.
Is this your coat?
Don't do it.
Fat guy in a little coat. Fat guy in a little coat.
Don't.
Fat guy in a little coat. Fat guy in a little coat.
Take it off, dickhead. I'm serious.
Richard, what's happening?
Anyways,
right.
Storyline and the plot, these are exactly the same. No one could even be bothered to write a summary for this. So it says, two brothers befriend an escaped two brothers escape. Jesus Christ, they don't escape. Two brothers befriend. Oh my God, damn, man. I got to slow down. All right.
You want me to try?
No, I'll do it. Two brothers befriend an escaped Mashal. Oh my God. All right, last time. We're getting it. This is it.
Where did Mashal come from?
I have no idea. I think it's a combination mental patient. All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.